Uh, Good day, good evening to our friends in Vietnam. I hope you're doing all well and exercising your brain to get used to such difficult information and getting comfortable with this information. Um, I think I'm waiting for the host to pin me so everyone can see me. Um, Pin me, please. Mm. While we're waiting for a tech team or Anastasia, thank you so much, ladies. I just wanted to ask how are you guys doing with your homeworks and how are you doing with quizzes? I personally found that just the notes I had to read 2 or 3 times and really think about it. For some reason, reading is a little bit easier for me, but notes really helping me with homeworks. So I hope it's the same, or maybe I hope it's easier for you. Also, I wanted to remind you that today we're in class 4, what Buddha really meant of ACI 15. And we almost halfway, and also would like to remind you that next Tuesday, it's going to be our session of Q's and A's. So please get ready. I'm sure you have a list of things, and please don't be shy to ask any questions. Um, because if you have a question, like our teachers say, and you're raising this question, maybe you're helping someone else, not being shy and ask the same question. So this is going to be a very interesting and profound class with our teacher, Venerable Gyelse. And again, before we start, I would like to take a moment and think about our intention. This is such a difficult information. We study emptiness. What an amazing karma we have. And what an amazing power we have to help others with this information. We are, as Geshe-la says, 1 in a million on this planet who truly get this understanding and this knowledge and these teachings. So let's take a few moments and think about our intention. Thank you for taking your time and listening to me. And on that note, I would like to invite our incredible teacher, Venerable Gyelse, to teach class 4 of the ACI 15, what Buddha really meant. Get yourself ready.
Yeah, what the heck did he really mean? That's why we're here, to try and figure that out. So thank you, Natasha, for giving us the time to reflect on why we're here and how we can use this in the world, in our lives, how we can better understand seeds and emptiness, and through that process, change our world, right? And with that in mind, let's take a moment to imagine our perfect world, right? Does it look like it is right now? Do we have a perfect world right now? Or would you like to see it different? And how would you like to see it different? Right? Let's take a moment to think about that. And then we'll offer that perfect world to everybody in every world, in every universe, that they too may have a perfect world, right? My first words of the morning. Here is the great earth filled with the smell of incense, covered with a blanket of flowers. The great mountain, the four continents, wearing a jewel of the sun and moon. In my mind, I make them the paradise of a Buddha and offer it all to you. By this deed, may every living being experience the pure world. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamnirya Tayami. And then, what the heck are we doing? We're going for shelter and ultimate compassion and love, right? I go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I achieve enlightenment. By the power of the goodness that I do in giving and the rest, may I reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Did I lose you guys? I hope not. No, I didn't. Okay. I go for refuge to, I'm sorry, you totally blacked out of my screen. Let's start again. I go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I achieve enlightenment. By the power of the goodness that I do in giving and the rest, may I reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha until I achieve enlightenment. By the power of the goodness that I do by listening to this class and studying and the rest, may I reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. Okay. So let's share my screen. I didn't share it before. Move things around. No, I don't want it down there. I like to put you up at the top of my screen so I can see you. And then I have the questions down on my other screen, the chat. So, what did the Buddha really mean? So, we've talked about a lot of things so far. And today we're going to go more deeply into those three attributes. What were they? Anyone remember? Kuntak. Okay, somebody else answer. What's the next one? Shenwan. Thank you, Juan. Yes, thank you, Katrin. Somebody else, and last one. Kuntak, Shenwan's, and Yongdrup. Yes, thank you, An. Thank you, Min. Yes. So, as you know, this whole problem started when Buddha taught the Dharma 3 times, right? He taught 3 what we call turnings of the wheel. These are like 3 great themes or subjects that he taught throughout his life. So we're not talking again about historic periods, but we're talking about these three great ideas that Lord Buddha taught throughout his life. And in the first great turning of the wheel, he talked about all of the different ways of dividing up a self. And we're going to talk about that later today, okay? The self, something that's really important to us, right? Probably the most important thing. And if you've been to Mixed Nuts class or you've read parts of the Abhidharma Kosha, this is kind of like that's the study of the self is like what is talked about in the first chapter. And also, as I have recited in last classes, if you've ever studied the Heart Sutra, that's the main theme of the Heart Sutra. We go through all the parts of a person and we learn more about the person. There are no eyes. There are no ears. There are no nose. There is no nose, right? In the Heart Sutra. So, in the first turning of the wheel, Lord Buddha is mainly going through different parts of a person or the different parts of the universe. And then he sort of says that everything does have some sort of existence by definition. So that's the first turning of the wheel. When he gets to the second turning of the wheel, he gets pretty radical and he says, nothing has any nature of its own. And then in the third turning of the wheel, that's the one triggered by our hero, the Bodhisattva named Dundam Yandakpak, right? He's asking this question for us 2,500 years later. Buddha, what did you mean? Did you mean what you said in the second turning of the wheel? I mean, it's pretty radical. Nothing exists? Which, of course, asking that question implies, did you mean what you said in the first turning of the wheel? And which are we to take literally, and which are we to take figuratively? So, like a good philosopher, Lord Buddha splits the question. And he says, well, sometimes I was and sometimes I wasn't. Like, I kind of think about it. Sometimes Geshe can tell a story that appears to be not quite what I remember, right? And it's like, is what does he mean? Why is he telling it this way? Right? Is it figurative or is it literal? And I'm sure you can think of other people in your life where that's probably a good question. Are they serious or are they not serious? That's kind of the words we use. Right? So in the second turning of the world, he says, when I said nothing had any nature of its own, with some things I was being literal, and with some things I was being figurative. And you want if you want to understand it more easily, you can divide all the stuff in the world into three groups. Sometimes they're called the three attributes of the mind-only school. So when I said nothing had a nature, I meant three different things. The first thing I meant was that nothing had a nature of existing by definition. What does that mean? It means from its own side, right? Through some unique way of being or something like that, right? So when I was talking like that, I was talking about imaginary things. Like a flower that could just grow in midair. Just ideas, just imaginary. So they can refer to something like a flower that grows in midair or like Tashi, like a Katrina, like Kadrin, right? They refer to some things like that. And some things don't in either case, right? They don't exist from their own side, through their own unique way of being, because they are just things you make up in your mind. So that's the first thing that I meant. Second thing I meant is that nothing has any nature of growing, meaning those things in the world which have causes, they have causes, right? They don't grow by themselves. And what was the most important example of that thing that we talked about that has causes and doesn't grow by themselves? Suffering. What's our biggest suffering? What's the most impactful suffering? Death. Yeah. That's the thing that impacts us the most, or we think it does. Death is the biggest of the 99.9999%, right? So the third thing I meant when I said things didn't have a nature was that certain things are not ultimate in various ways. And in that case, I was referring to emptiness itself. We're just reviewing, right? We need to keep reviewing because it's hard stuff. I found myself in my dreams thinking about Shenwangs and Yongdrups and Kuntaks and by definition. And I don't know about you guys, but I think it's a good sign. It's like cooking it at night in your subconscious. And of course, we can define it positively as the thing that you see that purifies your negative thoughts permanently, eventually, after you see it. Or you can define it negatively as the fact that nothing in the world exists by itself. It's kind of looking at two sides of the coin of emptiness, right? So we talked about the three attributes. We are using more than not the Tibetan words. Kuntak in English means imaginary things, constructs, right? And then we have those 99.999% of things, those shenwangs, which are changing things or dependent things. And then Yongdrup, which the mind-only school, it's their word for it. It's their code word for emptiness. And it's not emptiness in the sense that the middle way school says that it's emptiness. So they call it totality. So Buddha goes through explaining that. And he goes through explaining the other four radical statements he made. Nothing starts, nothing stops. Everything's peace, everything's nirvana. You notice that two are negative and two are positive? He explains all of those, and in each case, he's using these three categories, Kuntaks, Shenwangs, and Yongdrups. This is how he answers the Bodhisattva, through these three categories. And then, of course, because we have a very sharp Bodhisattva, maybe it was Ben Kramer in a past life, right? He asks this very natural question, which is, what are the three categories? Where do you come up with that? Why did you come up with that? And why didn't you say it in the first place? Right? Why in the second turning of the wheel did you say nothing exists, nothing has any nature of its own? And why didn't you in the second turning of the wheel bring up these three things? Why are you bringing them up now? And what do you mean? What do they mean? Frankly, they're kind of weird. They don't seem to connect very much, these three categories. Things you make up in your mind, things that change, and emptiness. Did you have that question? It's like, what's the connection here between these three? Is there some point to dividing these things into these three? Is there some kind of secret message that you're not telling us? And Lord Buddha is saying all of this in the commentary on the True Intent Sutra, right? So this is the next question that our Bodhisattva raises. What do you mean when you say an imaginary thing? And are there any typical qualities of imaginary things that we should know about? And what do you think Lord Buddha says? Yeah, there are. So being a good Galupa, which of course they didn't have back then, he says he divides imaginary things into three categories in the sutra. So he starts out with shenwangs, dependent things. And that's what we're going to dive into. So there are three characteristics of dependent things. In the third turning of the wheel, Lord Buddha explains in the commentary of the True Intent of the Sutras that all of reality can be divided into three attributes. They are very important and they relate in an interdependent way. So there are three qualities of shenwangs which relate to kuntaks in three specific ways. So now we're going to see the relationships here, right? How do these three, they're standing, first we see them standing alone, like we would see a group of three friends. But what are their relationships with each other? So the first one, Nampar Tope Chuyul. Nampar means mental, Tokpe means construct, and Chuyul, Yul means place. So this is Chuyul is the arena, the kind of like a sports arena, that kind of arena, the arena. So, and Nampar Tokpe means to construct something. And where do we construct it? In our mind. Yeah. So dependent things are the arena where you create your constructs. You can see that on this slide. So I hope everybody has a pen. When you look at this pen, according to the Mind Only School, you're doing two things of Nampar Tokpa, or Nampar Tope. One, you're creating a mental image. Or you're focusing on the mental image of, quote, pen. Should I say that again? Think so. Either you're creating a mental image, or you're focusing on the mental image of pen. It's very close to the idea of a dunchi, which we studied in Madhyamika in Middle Way. It's close to it, but forget about it, right? Forget about Madhyamika. You are constructing something, right? This was just a blue and clear stick until you called it pen. And then you had a nice thing called pen in your mind. For me, even though I wasn't studying this stuff when my son was an infant, to watch how he labeled things and had an image in his mind of things. So, like, we had a cat. And so he learned the name cat in relationship to the cat. And then in baby books, there were these pictures of kittens, right? And so he already had this mental image of cat when he looked at this picture book. And he labeled the kittens cat. And I'm sure those of you who are parents, have watched this phenomena in your child. Or I think maybe my favorite one is, we lived on a farm and we had chickens. And he was maybe 3 or something. We went out to the ocean and he saw seagulls and he labeled them water chicks. right? Chickens was his word for birds, obviously, of any sort. And they were on the water. So they were called water chicks. And even though I hadn't studied this stuff, now that I have and I reflect on it, I can see how those mental images come into being by someone labeling something for you. And then that becomes your mental image of a water chick or a tree or, whatever it happens to be. So, by the way, in the mind only school, they say you never really see the pen itself. You are constantly dealing with constructs. The pen itself is a very subtle, very difficult thing to get at. And you almost never go beyond the curtain of your images, your own mental images, your own constructs. Ekaterina, am I going too fast for you? There is a real pen out there that exists by definition from its own side, according to the mind only school. But it's just like the playground where your mind invents its constructs. It's the arena. So the constructing state of mind is playing around with that object and making up a thing called pen. Right? In this school, mind only school, yes, there is a very subtle object out there. And then your mind is playing around in that arena and making some creation of a pen. Most of the time, when you think you're seeing a pen or constructing, you're constructing on the pen, you're actually dealing with your own mental image of the pen, your own construct of the pen. I didn't give you the second one, did I? Let's put it up there. Oh, well, okay, we only have one on that card, on that slide, sorry. And let's see. So does that construct exist? Does the construct refer to an existing thing in the mind-only school? Yes. Shenwangs or changing things are the things that we throw our ideas at, right? That we build our constructs around. So dependent things are the arena where we create our construct. That's the first quality. Okay, number 2. Sekuntak, Tsenikine. Kuntak Senikine. What's a kuntak? Mental construct, imagined thing. Yeah, imaginary. Seni basically means definition or the attribute. And ne here means of place. So the imagined thing, attribute of place. Let's put that into something we can understand. Dependent things are the place where the constructs stay. Kuntak Seni together means a group called Kuntaks. Ne is like the place where they get parked, the place where you park your Kuntaks. They're kind of sticky, those Kuntaks, aren't they? For example, let's take that baby boy. The baby boy is the place where the construct Tashi stays. Like Anastasia, I see you have a young boy coming through occasionally. I don't know his name, but he's just, to me, the boy. But the construct of whatever his name is stays on that boy for Anastasia, right? So the constructing state of mind is represented by who? Mom and dad, right? Or mom or dad, can be, or mom and dad and dad, it can be whatever combination. This constructing state of mind is represented by them, and that they name him Tashi. So the kuntak, the dependent thing, is this little blob of baby boy out there. The construct is Tashi, the name and the thought in the parent's mind. How do we know that? What's the proof of that? What's the evidence? That the construct Tashi doesn't exist by definition. Anastasia says her son's name is Pavel. So, okay, how do we know that Pavel doesn't exist by definition? We have different constructs. No one called him Pavel until his parents made their mental images and started to name him Pavel. They have a name, they have a mental image of who that name applies to, and then it's applied. The construct is applied to that changing thing. So we don't know. I have a different construct. It's just a boy. It's Anastasia's son, I'm assuming, right? So the key point is that each of the three attributes depend on the other two. They stand like a tripod and support each other. So Lord Buddha is defining changing things by showing how imaginary things relate to them. They're not just three random groups of things. They tie together and define each other in a really beautiful way. So misunderstanding is not realizing that the construct Tashi or Pavel is only something that you made up. It is thinking that Tashi must be Tashi, or Pavel, hello Pavel, must be Pavel from the beginning, that he was born Pavel. Said Pavel on his forehead when he was born, right? It's thinking. Misunderstanding is thinking that Pavel existed from the beginning from his own side. And that is the gotcha. That is the thing we deny that never could have existed in the first place. So, when our Bodhisattva asked, what's a Shenwang? First thing Buddha says is, oh, it's that thing that you aim your kuntaks towards. He's defining changing things by describing how imaginary things relate to them. And that's how he's going to do this whole answer. And they define each other in a really very, very beautiful way. And that's why he brought up these three things. That's what we're covering today. And we begin to start to think of it as independent, this name. We start to think of Pavel, of Tashi, as having some independent existence. Like my own name exists independently of me, right? I must have been Gyelse forever. Think how we defend ourselves when somebody says something not very nice about and says your name, right? Like Gyelse was mean. It's like, Gyelse was mean? What do you mean? Yeah. We think it exists self-existently. That Pavel must have been Pavel forever. And that it's not our construct. And concepts, remember too that they don't change. And then there's number 3. Say Duje Kitsema. Duje Kitsema. So Duje means factor, or like anything which causes another thing. Anything that brings about something else. In Sanskrit, it's called a samskara. So Dujekitsema means the characteristics of a factor. So here, it's another quality of changing things. And here, to put it into maybe more understandable language, dependent things exhibit the quality of making things happen. What does that mean? It means they are cause things themselves, and they cause other things. Right? Changing things are cause things themselves, and they cause other things. So he's explaining what it means to be a changing thing. And what does he say? He says, oh, Dundam Yandak Pak. Oh, my dear Bodhisattva, you want to know what I mean when I say changing thing? It's anything that has a cause, anything that has a factor, right? Well, heck, why didn't he just say that? What did he answer? Oh, it's those things you think about as a pen. And it's those things that get thought about as pens. And it's those things that do something like a pen. Those are the three characteristics. So again, Bodhisattva, he comes up and says, can you tell me what you mean by changing things? And Lord Buddha says, I mean three things when I say changing thing. It's the thing you're imagining as a changing thing. It's the thing that gets imagined as a changing thing. And it's the thing that changes. So let's go over it one more time. Bodhisattva comes up to Buddha and says, in the second turning of the wheel, you said nothing has any nature of its own, right? Yes. Did you mean what you said? No. Well, what were you talking about? Oh, three different things. Three different natures they don't have. That's all I meant. I didn't mean it literally. Of course, things have natures. Then the Bodhisattva asks, well, how do you get these three natures? What are you talking about? Three different groups or three different attributes of things? He says, well, what's the first one you want to ask about? And our Bodhisattva says, Shenwangs. Tell me about those. What do you mean when you say dependent things are changing things? And frankly, it would be easy if Lord Buddha would just say things that change, things that have causes, things that cause other things. That's a changing thing. But he doesn't answer that way. He says the things you imagine as changing things, the things that get imagined by you as a changing thing, and the thing or things that change. So, as our bodhisattva, who has this fine intellect, he says, well, why did you go through the first two? I mean, why did you do that? Why do you confuse us? Why are you going into all of that? Lord Buddha wants us to think about how things are constructs. He's trying to force us to think about how changing things are constructs in our mind. He's trying to get us to understand that a lot of this, 99.999% of stuff in our world, we're making up in our own mind. He's trying to break through us thinking things exist self-existently out there in and of themselves. that they're fixed, unchanging, that the person you live with is a fixed and unchanging person if you live with someone, or the people you work with, or see on the street. He's trying to get us to understand that the boy named Tashi or Pavel wasn't Tashi from the beginning. And the pen wasn't a pen from the beginning. Don't forget in all of this that Shen Wangs exist by definition. It does exist out there. I may be interpreting it in a certain way. I may be calling it a certain thing. But there is something out there. There is a pen out there. There is a boy out there. Isn't that what we all really think? I know it's what I think. 99.99% of the time. That's why we are mind-only school, because we really believe it. And we're trying to overcome our belief in that. So please, Venerable Gyelse, what the heck does that have to do with my enlightenment? What's that got to do with me not dying? That's the question we should always be asking. What does it have to do with me? Why do I need to know that? Who cares? It's very important because what? Because you will think about other people as if they existed by definition, and that they're not constructs of your mind. Okay, what's the problem with that? This glass of water will quench my thirst, whether it's a construct of not or not, right? The problem is that you'll begin to think that it's good or bad from its own side, by definition, and not something that your mind is creating. And you have to appreciate that. That ex-husband or boyfriend or girlfriend is not good or bad from their own side, the boss, by definition. They are being created by your mind, forced on you by your past seeds, the seeds you planted, your actions, right? That's why this is important. Come on, there we go. I need to check. Oh, thank you, okay. So why did Lord Buddha present changing things in constructs like this? In summary, according to the third turning of the wheel. Lord Buddha said dependent things are those things that we imagine as a changing thing, that you think about as being pen. 2, those things that get imagined as a changing thing, that are thought about as a pen. 3, those things that change, that function as a pen. Again, he's trying to force us to see that in reality, changing things are actually just imaginary things, forced on us by our past deeds, right? Coming out as luminous images placed on, in mind-only school, something that is out there, right? So there really is a pen out there, right? There really is a Pavel out there. There really is a Sebastian out there. There rarely is one out there that is independent of my construct, but what I see is my construct. So then the text gets into something about naming things and the person who knows the name for a thing. Because, for instance, if you take an infant, do they know the name of a thing yet? So if a constructing state of mind is that which gives a certain name to an object and thinks about it in a certain way, then yeah. And that's how we experience our world, right? Then how can an infant experience their world through constructs? They say, the wise ones, the teachers of the past, Lord Buddha and all the rest, that we had past lives and we will have future lives. And we carry seeds from lifetime to lifetime. So an infant thinks about things in a certain way based on their seeds from past lives. So for instance, an infant, they name everything da, 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 right? They, they don't speak names for things, but they do already think of things in a certain way through their constructs. At least this is what we're told. I want to know what the proof of that is. How do we know that? Well, they recognize certain things, right? So there has to be something going on in the thought process. And why are we thinking of a pen as a pen? Because of millions of years of past seeds that makes you predisposed to see pen when you look at a pen. You're just returning to what you always knew in past lives. So a dog, for instance, has collected, we would say, lousy karma from our viewpoint, and doesn't have a recent memory that would force it to recognize this as a pen, this cylinder. Its thinking is a chewable toy, right? And I can say I know that from experience, having had dogs that have chewed up pens and numerous other things as puppies that I saw as something other than a chewable toy. So, in other words, what we're saying is that nothing in your life is new. Like, how come Mozart could play the piano so beautifully from such a young age? He had to have been remembering what he already knew for millions of years. So we see all the objects in the world around us the way we do merely from the habit of millions of past lives. So how do we change the world around us? How do we especially move up to higher diamond way level? It's a very big and difficult job. And it's much easier if you understand how you're making up the names for everything. That is a clue. This is the perfection of wisdom. And if we get this lesson, we are eligible to move up to Diamond Way. At present, we are like in a box. We are restricted to everything we remember from our past lives. And we are perceiving or inventing our world based on those seeds that have been there for thousands and thousands of years. We're not inherently smarter than animals. We just have the habit for thousands of lifetimes of seeing this cylinder as a pen. Therefore, in this lifetime, we recognize it fairly quickly as being a pen. To move up to seeing the world in a new way has to happen through the door called the perfection of wisdom, which is to understand how you are inventing the pen. You have to understand the relationship between constructs, changing things, and emptiness. This is knowledge. And making that leap between what you knew from your past lives to what you are capable of being, an enlightened being, is accomplished through the perfection of wisdom. We have to know how we are creating our world around us. And again, I want to remind you, because we're so bathed in middle way, that according to Mind Only School, dependent things do exist from their own side. Even though our constructs of the changing object are only made up in our head. The changing thing is believed to have some existence from its own side, by definition. And we believe this naturally. And the reason we're studying mindfulness,
Just a few moments, we lost Venerable Gyelse. Her internet is not very strong where she is, so I think it's also indication that our teachings is so profound and so strong. So we have to rejoice that we're making such effort and getting those teachings. It's a very powerful and valuable karma. So let's rejoice and let's give a little bit of time, few seconds, minutes. It did happen before, and Venerable Gyelse will be back on the screen. Um, Perhaps we can practice rejoice that we here getting these incredible, valuable teachings. We had eons of lives of existence. And now we so close, as Geshe-la said, we are so close like a bullet touching the paper to get through. So let's rejoice our karma and the good merit we're collecting right now to get through this last thing, paper, to see emptiness directly. Um, so yes, difficult things with mind only. And if you have questions in the meantime, please write them down in your chats, raise them here, or directly send them to me, and we'll put the list together for next class on Tuesday. Okay? How is everyone doing? Let me see.
I'm back.
Yes, perfect timing. Perfect
I am
timing.
now on my phone.
Mhm. We were just reminding everyone to collect good merit and rejoice in such a powerful teachings we're getting here. And as Geshe-la saying, we're so close like a bullet to get through. And also,
Absolutely.
yeah, and also reminding everyone that if you have questions, put them in the chat here in your channels and Telegram, write me directly so I can combine the list for Tuesday.
Cool. Cool. So, can you see my screen? Am I still sharing it? No. Okay, let me share. Here we are. Okay. So sorry about that. Welcome to the internet in Camp Verde, Arizona. It's not always very stable. Um, so yeah, we're talking about how we're caught up, and I think most of it is because of our vision is so dependent on things outside of us to place us in the world that we think that they exist self-existently outside of this, right? And that's what the mind-only school says. At least there's, oops, I don't have a pen right here. Let me get one. There's a black one. That there is something out there. And that objects in the world around us do exist from their own side. Shenwangs do exist from their own side. And I need to see Ekaterina. There she is, because she's make sure she's keeping up with us. Because, yeah, according to the mind-only school, there is stuff self-existently out there. And we place our imaginary thoughts and names on them. And we were talking about before we were so rudely interrupted that to get to the diamond way, to get to a Buddha paradise, to become an enlightened being, we have to understand this. And you know what? According to the mind-only school, an enlightened being is an enlightened being from their own side as well. And a normal person is a normal person from their own side. Because they are changing things that exist by definition. And that they have characteristics that are just our mental projection. So according to middle way view, let's put that hat on. A person's nature is nothing but a mental projection. Therefore, if you collect the right seeds, all the things in the world around you can become holy. You will be getting messages from every direction and seeing that even the person who is irritating you is trying to teach you something. And it becomes this most amazing, holy world to live in. So moving right along here, going a little slow today. So I went through the homework questions, and I'm going to touch on some of them because some of them I think need a little bit more explanation. So homework 2, it says, in explanations of the process of making constructs that follow from the sutra references just mentioned, a distinction is made between the dependent thing that is the object of the constructing state of mind. The constructing state of mind itself and the construct that lies between them. Explain these 3 as they occur in the example of the boy named Tashi. So we talked about this in class 2, if you remember. The object of this construct is this blob, the baby. This, in fact, is a little baby girl, but I use the picture. Still unnamed. This is the Shenwang in this case. It's the thing that's going to receive the construct. It's the thing that's going to be thought about in a certain way. Mom and dad are giving the baby a name. Maybe it's a day later, Tashi. In my case, it was 6 weeks later. And that proves it's made up, right? So what is the construct that, quote, lies between them? Tashi. That's the construct. And that's the whole idea in this school. There is a thing out there, Pen. I then think of it in a certain way, and then at some point, I get confused between my own construct and the real Pen out there. So that's all this question means. You probably are going to have to read the question over several times before you understand what it's asking. So that's why I wanted to go over it. It's like, what? What are they asking? It's just that the mind-only school says there is a pen out there. There is someone out here naming it and thinking of it in a certain way. So the pen or the baby is out there, and dad and mom are making a construct that even physically you can see that the baby lies between them. The construct also lies between them, naming the baby. Homework question 3. In the illustration of the boy named Tashi, what is the indication that according to the mind-only school, the construct does not exist by definition? It wasn't Tashi when he was first born. Everybody didn't say, oh, Tashi's finally here, right? At least not not back then. A lot of times now, you know what the sex of your baby's going to be. You choose the name and yeah, oh, Tashi's finally here. But at some point you labeled them. That's the important thing. In this situation, in ancient days, they didn't know boy or girl. They didn't have ultrasounds and what is that? Baby reveals or something like that, a reveal party. The naming came later. There was a naming party, probably. And that's a sign that it doesn't exist by definition. In this school, in the mind-only school, existing by definition means it has its own real existence out there in and of itself, penness from its own side. And that's evidence that Tashi, the Kuntak, called Tashi, does not exist by definition in this school. Now I cannot see the chat now that I'm off my external screen, but I'm going to ask you how many things in this school exist by definition? How many of those 3 groups exist by definition? Okay, now I can open 2. Yeah, what are they? What are they? Shenwangs and Yong groups. Yes, thank you, An. Shenwangs and Yongdrups, dependent things and emptiness. The emptiness and the changing things exist by definition. Why? Because they exist from their own side. You don't have to make them up. But kuntaks, those made-up things, those imaginary things, they don't exist by definition. Because you just made them up. Okay. So the interdependence of the three attributes. Why did Lord Buddha make up these three categories of stuff? What's the point of talking about things in this way? Kuntaks, shenwaks, yonjrups. What's he trying to teach us? And this is where we get into the interdependence of the three, the tripod. Each one is defined by the other one. It's really quite beautiful. If you get it, then you understand the mind-only school really well. You'll have this big aha moment into the mind-only school. And the point is that each one of those three helps the other two to exist. They're like three corners of a triangle. Do kuntaks apply to shenwangs? Do shenwangs apply to yongdrups? Do yongdrups apply to kuntaks? They define each other. So Lord Buddha doesn't just describe dependent things in isolation as things that change or things that are caused. He describes them in terms of their relation to constructs. Shenwangs are the basis for kuntaks. And I just keep going over it, I know. And I hope you don't get irritated by it. It's trying to really get a deep and deeper understanding that Shenwang is what gets called thing. Shenwang is the thing that receives the name of things, quote things, right? Shenwang is changing things. And so therefore, Shenwangs, it's like the center of this whole conversation. It's the basis for it. And those 99.999% of Shenwangs are mainly suffering and the cause of suffering. So you have to think about them in certain ways. There's two ways to think about them. Two ways that you create mental images or form constructs about things, sorry. There are two ways to kuntakasize, two ways to imagine things. So the first one, Noa lo kuntak pe kuntak. So Noa means the essence of an object. And Noa la kuntak pe, kuntak means a kuntak, an imaginary thing, which is kuntakt or imagined about the essence of a thing. A construct you construct about the essence of a thing. In English, they're spelled the same, but they're pronounced slightly differently. A construct, you construct. Right? So one is a noun and one is a verb. About the essence of thing. For example, pen. Sorry, my camera's down here. Or car. It's a verbalization or a conceptualization. You think of it as a pen, and that is a construct. And that's about the essence of the pen. So that's the basic one, is to think pen. What is the second one? Well, it's the various qualities of pen. So here it's the construct you construct about the features of a thing. For example, black, long, sharp, relative to a pen. Or say chubbiness of the baby. You can construct a construct relative to the basic nature of an object, pen. The basic nature or a specific feature or characteristic, we could say, of an object. So that would be long and black. You think of it as a pen, you hear the word pen in your mind, you call it a pen and you visualize it as a pen, you use it as a pen, you conceptualize it as a pen. So it could be either of those or both of those, either visualizing it or conceptualizing it or both. Generally, we do both, right? We visualize it and think about it. Because we're thinking pen and we're visualizing or conceptualizing pen in our mind. And it's a perfect mental image of the thing as a pen that we mistake for the pen. In the middle way school, is there something behind the pen? No. Yes, there is. But not such that if you kept looking, that you would find it. You keep seeing more and more and more. There's no end to the sense data. There's always be something behind that. You can always go smaller and smaller and smaller. You can keep dividing it. So in the middle way school, Madhyamika Prasangika, you can keep dividing it and you'll never come to the end. A sign in the middle way school that something does not exist by definition is that when you look at the thing that you are giving a name to, you don't find it. If you were to sit down and meditate on the pen, where is the pen? Is it the whole thing? Well, but the whole thing is made of parts. And we don't have time to get into that, for me to digress into that. But that's what middle way would say. You will not find pen in any, or penness in any of this object here. It's all a mental image. Is there any such thing in the mind-only school? Well, there better be. Otherwise, there wouldn't be anything. One is like An endless onion, peel after peel after peel after peel. In the middle, there's nothing. So that's an example. And another one is, oh yeah, you peel the first one, but there's something there. That's mind only. Middle way is the one where you keep peeling it and there's nothing, right? Is there any other way of thinking of the pen in the mind only school? Are there only these two flavors of kuntax, right? Can you ever have any more than these two about shenwangs? And I'll give you a clue. Is there any really wrong one you can have about it? What about to think that it is the thing that we call the pen from its own side? We're talking kuntax, right? There are two correct, non-mistaken constructs. However, a third kind of construct is mistaken. I know this is all very intellectual and heady. To think that the pen is what we call the pen from its own side. This construct is misunderstanding itself according to the mind-only school. The fact that it is a pen by definition from its own side, out here, not merely as a nominal, so-called thing which doesn't exist at all. A pen is not the thing you call pen from its own side. Emptiness is the fact that there doesn't exist anywhere in the universe a pen that could be called a pen from its own side. Again, that's the gotcha in the mind-only school. Kuntalks, imaginary things, the name, the label, the thought, are the only one of the three groups that doesn't exist by definition in the mind-only school. And that is totality, yonjuk, or emptiness, in mind-only school. And now the triangle comes together. So let's do a quick review. Do we think of do we think, let's see. Do we think of shenwangs in a correct way or a wrong way? Both. There's two correct ways and one wrong way. So give me two correct ways. All right, here. Do I have dandruff? Let's say yes, I do. I think about it as dandruff. That's correct. That's the essence of the object. The details, are they correct? Yeah, you have dandruff. Can we think of them and conceptualize them that way? Yeah. Can you call them that reasonably? Yeah, I can call it dandruff. Otherwise, I wouldn't have to use some dandruff shampoo, right? There is something out there. Right? That's not what we're talking about. So, so there is something out there. What about what doesn't exist? Screaming boss. So what's the worst one? Dandruff is what we call dandruff from its own side. Dandruff is always bad. Does that exist out there from its own side? There's never such a good thing as dandruff. It's bad from its own side. I hate it. I don't like anybody who has dandruff, and I don't like it when I get it. And I'll spend as much money as I need to not to have dandruff. Even if there are people who need food or heat or light, it's okay. I got to get rid of this dandruff stuff first. We're like that, right? It's where we desire overcoming what we know to be right because we believe that is bad by itself, from its own side. It's always bad. And it's the most important bad. And it's more important than people not getting fed in a country like Sudan. I'll spend my money on dandruff shampoo instead. It's more important. And the fact that that kind of dandruff doesn't exist is a yongdrup. It's empty. It ain't there, never was there, and never will be there. So Kuntaks and Shenwangs, right? Kuntaks are constructs. So we're doing a review here. It means an imaginary thing or a construct of the mind. To think my boss is so difficult to work with is a correct construct. But to think my boss is so difficult to work with because he is so difficult from his or her own side is an incorrect construct. Because this construct exists in name only as something that the mind focuses on. Like dandruff is bad from its own side, is an incorrect construct. Why? Because it leads us to emphasize shopping for cosmetics and ignore the people of Gaza or Ukraine or Sudan or Syria who need things just to stay alive. Does dandruff exist? Yeah. But dandruff that is bad by definition doesn't exist. When we think of things as self-existent, we commit negative actions by hurting someone to get the things we want. And of course, to avoid the things we don't want. And then our suffering continues. So our misunderstanding is the pen we call a pen from its own side. Its essence is this basic thing, pen. And its features, when I was writing this, I had a blue pen, but we'll say the feature or details of this pen are black. Right? So these poor old Shenwangs are sitting around this room. How many? Around your room, around my room? Eh, about a gazillion. There's Shenwangs all around you. The people around you are Shenwangs. The hair on your head are Shenwangs. The dandruff in your hair is a Shenwang. The chairs are Shenwangs. The computers, the city, the country. Got it? Do you think of them in a correct way or a wrong way? Probably both. Two correct ways and wrong ways. Right? Two correct ways. We think about them as dandruff. That's correct. That's about the essence of the object. The details, are they correct? Yeah. Can you think of them and conceptualize them that way? Yeah. Can you reasonably call them that? Yeah. Otherwise, they wouldn't use so much dandruff shampoo. That's not the kuntoks we're talking about. We're talking about kuntoks that don't exist, imaginary things that don't exist. And so here we're talking about dandruff is what we call dandruff from its own side, and it's always bad. Okay. So Shenwangs, dependent things, that was kuntoks, Shenwangs, dependent things. We can say positively, it's anything that grows. And it must have a nature of growing from its own causes and conditions. Remember that? That was a while ago, like yesterday or Tuesday. Negatively, nothing has a nature of growing without its causes and conditions. And then Yongdrup's totality or emptiness. Literally, Yongdrup means everything exists. And it means that the minute an object exists, it's 100% empty. So Yongdrup equals Shenwangs minus kuntoks. We're getting closer. I don't know if I'm going to quite end on time. In Middle Way, there are about 20 different words for self-existence. In the Middle Way school, all these phrases mean the same thing. But what do you think? In the mind-only school, they make some distinctions between these phrases. For example, some things exist by definition, but are not self-existent. So here are some of these phrases. They exist naturally. They exist from their own side. Exist by definition. Exist truly. Exist self-existently. In the lower schools, you can exist by definition and not exist in truth. You can exist, you can be some of them and not be others. They don't mean exactly the same thing. In middle way, does anything exist by definition? No. In mind only? Yeah, this pen, right? The word self-existent is a little tricky. And in this school, mind only, right? We have to remember which school we're in. In this school, to think of this pen as existing from its own side would be very correct. There is something out there. We project onto it, but there is something out there. That's pretty much how most of us think all the time, even when we think about projections. Like the question comes up for me when Gyelse says it's like ice cream with chocolate sauce. It's like, but what about the ice cream? Is it out there self-existently? Have you ever thought about that? And it depends on which school you're in. Mind only would say, yeah, there's something out there. So what does it mean to exist? And what does identity mean? When you think of a pen as being a pen by definition, which is incorrect, are you thinking of something as being there which is not there? Thinking about whether or not it exists. Like the pen is in my hand. Or are you thinking of something in a way in which it is not? So now we're talking about identity. Before we were talking about whether it exists or not. It's identity, like the pen is not a glass. In English, but I think it's, and I know it's not true in other languages, but the verb to be is used to describe both existence and identity. In West Chinese language, there are two different words used, and possibly in your languages, which I don't know. May, which means it is not, and yu, which means it is. For example, there is a computer on the desk, or there isn't a computer on the desk. So you could say there doesn't exist a computer on the desk. That's may and yu. It's talking about existence. Now, min and yin, min is it is not, and yin is it is. For example, the cup is not the pen, or a cup, a glass, is not a pen. Now, there is something that exists there. But what is its identity? Is it a glass or a pen? Or more subtly, say you're at Diamond Mountain in the summertime and it's dusk, you can't see very well, and you see something on the road. And it's this speckled thing, and you're looking at it, you're keeping your distance from it because you're not sure what it is. Is it a rope or is it a snake? Right? We're talking identity here. So the point of this vocabulary lesson is that when you are mistakenly focusing on the kind of constructs that don't exist, constructs that exist by definition from their own side, that are not just imaginary things, you are mainly misidentifying the nature of the construct. Does the boss exist? The construct exists. The boss, right? The construct you were focusing on does exist, but its identity is that of not existing by definition and merely being an invention of your own mind. So the fact that a pen is what we call a pen is something that exists. We can all agree on that, right? But it's not something that has an identity of existing by definition. Your construct that focuses on the essence, this is a pen, does exist. Your construct that focuses on the features, like this is a black pen, also exists. But your construct that focuses on a pen that is what we call pen from its own side is something that doesn't exist. A dog doesn't see it as a pen. So think about these two phrases. The fact that the pen is what we call a pen from its own side doesn't exist. The fact that the pen doesn't have an identity of having a construct related to it that exists by definition, meaning that it will always be labeled pen. This second way of looking at the emptiness of the pen is very important because we're not disputing the existence of the construct called the fact that this pen is what we call a pen. Let me let the interpreters catch up. We are disputing that the identity of the construct, the fact that this pen is what we call pen, is such that exists by definition from its own side. That's what we're disputing. That it is innately pen, nothing else. It could never be a chew toy. Bringing it back to us. Until you graduate to middle way, thinking, seeing your own body and mind as a construct, you can never become an enlightened being. because we still believe that our body and mind exist by definition from their own side. And that would mean that we have to get old and die, because aging and death would not just be a construct. It's something you gotta cook. Does your body and your mind exist? Yes. Does it exist in a unique, unchanging way? Does it exist by definition, self-existently? No, it doesn't. It's constantly changing. That's one way you can think about it. Mind only says, yes, there is a body and mind out there. And we construct what we see, what we call it, how we relate to it. Could it be perceived as an enlightened being's body and mind? Yeah, if we plant the seeds, then we would hear enlightened thoughts in our mind. We would see a body that is a body of light, not this body of flesh and bone and goo and blood, and it's impure and it has to die. So, come on. Lord Buddha, up to this point, has been talking about physical matter, which is the first heap. In the sutra, he now says that this same relationship between the three attributes can be established with regard to the other things he taught. Every one of these things has their own dependent thing, Shenmue, construct, Kuntak, and emptiness, totality, Yongju. The four remaining heaps, the four Arya truths, the 12 doors of sense, the 12 links of dependent things, the 18 divisions of the universe, the 4 kinds of sustenance, the 6 elements, which are all mentioned in the Abhidharma Kosha, were taught in the first turning of the wheel. The point of all of this, here, I was going to do this, sorry. Oop, went too far. The point of all of this analysis is to realize that all of the problems in your life are coming from your own constructs, which you hold to be existing from their own side. When I say you, I include me too, okay? Because of this wrong view, you react against them and collect bad seeds, which causes all of your suffering. And according to Diamond Way, every time that you have a single thought of a single object as existing from its own side, we have damaged our inner winds in our body and moved closer to death. So this thought that things are self-existent is literally killing us. In the Middle Way School, misunderstanding itself is a mental affliction. just misunderstanding your world, even if you don't get upset at anyone, is enough to kill you. And as the mind goes, so goes the physical parts. The point of this path, the point of Buddhism, is to stop this misunderstanding of seeing things as self-existent and to use this wisdom to stop your death and to help others do the same. It takes almost as much good karma to see someone reach enlightenment as to do it yourself. So don't be surprised if you're not seeing it happen at this point in your practice. You just got to plant the seeds. Oh, one more. And that, my dears, it's in 2 hours. Is the end of class, meditation. Again, if you really want to get something out of this course, you got to do the homework. You got to review it. You got to chew on it, discuss it, cook it in whatever way you can. You won't learn much of anything if you don't do the work. It'll just be some fuzzy thing in your mind in 2 weeks after this course is over. So I do encourage you to study together and to do the readings, look at the homework, think about it, meditate on it, contemplate it, right? So let's do a quick mandala. For all of these teachings being passed down to us and being able to think about them and transmit them and to use them to overcome our ingrained habit of seeing things coming at us. Sashi Puki Jukshin Metok Chom Rirab Lingshi Nyende Gempa Di Sangye Shingdu Mikte Ulwargi Jokun Namdak Shingla Chupar Sho Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayami Kewadi Kewokun Sunam Yashe Sok Shing Sunam Yashe Lejungwe Dampar Kuni Topar Sho. What a racehorse. A horse race, right? Oh my gosh, so much to cover. Please take advantage of us not having a formal class on Tuesday to go over what we've talked about in the last 4 classes, these 4 classes that we've studied. And then on Thursday, we'll pick up with class 5, but Tuesday will be a Q&A. And I'm not going to promise I can answer all the questions. I'm still a student too. Okay? Hope to be a student all my life. Yeah, so seems that, oh, Natasha had her hand raised.
Um, I was wondering if I can ask a question.
Well, we're over time.
Oh, yes, of course. I'll ask that Tuesday.
Yeah, save it for Tuesday. So everybody, if people need to go, already somebody had to go for another class. I don't want to hold you any longer. I'm sorry. There's just so much. It's like, what do I leave out? It's hard to choose. So Thank you
Thank
for
you so
hanging
much.
in there, and we'll see you on Tuesday. And
Thank
I
you
want
so
to go
much.
back to gallery view so I can see all your lovely faces. Oh, just about everybody has left already. Anyway.
Благодарю.
Спасибо большое.
Дякую.
Tatiana, Victoria, Katrina, Anne, Sebastian, Anna, Kadrin, I see all the time. Okay, you guys, have a good weekend. Don't get a headache trying to understand all this, and see you on Tuesday. Bye-bye.